Hello and welcome to Let's Talk Sports. I am Ralph Labella.
And I'm Ron Sen. Well, not lacking for controversy, I want to start with something from the remote past. Over 35 years ago, Samuel Shem, which is his pen name, wrote a book called The House of God. In that book, he discussed the injustices, the horrific abuse of trainees during medical training. And he came up with a set of 13 rules. 35 years later, he wrote a follow-up piece for the Atlantic Monthly talking about additional four rules that he learned from 35 years of being a psychiatrist. Number one, connect with people. No matter what business, sport you're in, it's always about people. Number two, have empathy. That is, relate to the people who are suffering and try to understand what they're going through. Number three, speak out and speak up. When you see something that seems wrong, say it. Go to the people that matter and say, that's wrong. And finally, learn your trade. If you're going to speak out about things, you better know what you're talking about. And one of the things we strongly believe in is giving people who have no voice a voice, even if it's ours.
I thought you were talking about my coaching philosophy for a while.
So, a lot of sports going on. Probably one of the big stories of the week was Michael Sam coming out as gay, SEC Defensive Player of the Year from the University of Missouri. He's expected to be something from a third to fifth round choice. Some people question whether he has played enough, had been productive enough against the best teams in the SEC, but there's a lot of discussion about, well, are the players going to be able to accept him in the locker room? Well, you know, the NFL is a pretty much equal opportunity place. They have murderers, rapists, alcoholics involved in fatal drug and alcohol car accidents, murder for hire. The NFL pretty much, if you can't fit into that mix, there's something really wrong with you.
Well, it's going to be up to the general managers, whoever selects them. You know, it's really not up to the players right off the bat. I mean, they're going to get some input if they're thinking about, I would imagine, if the Pats are looking at him, they would go to Brady and a couple of Wilfork, ask them what they think, you know, about the situation. If it's going to make some players uneasy, why are you going to draft them?
Well, I think the Patriots' point is they like taller guys, and they're saying probably 6'1.5", and if he's going to end up playing a linebacker position, they may just not think he's tall enough.
Yeah, but to be, you know, you have Belichick, right? If it's going to make some players, he's going to look at it and say, all right, if this guy's close, if he's close to this guy, he's not going to pick him. I mean, they don't want to, you know, bother the players in a way where, what if it affects two players?
Well,
why take the chance?
If somebody interviewed Belichick after the draft and said, you picked Michael Sam, how do you think that's going to work out in your locker room? He'd say, next question. I mean, he doesn't talk about anything he doesn't want to talk about.
Well, if you had him and you had another player who you didn't think was as good as him, but close to him, who would you pick if you had a general manager or the owner?
To me, it all depends on what your global evaluation. If they think he's a great guy, has a high motor, is trainable, and can adapt to whatever the situation they're going to put him in, it's okay. But I just don't think that he's really a need area for them.
Well, no, like what I'm trying to say is if say I had a business and he was better than the other guy, I would definitely pick him because it's me and him working together.
Right.
You know, it wouldn't bother me at all. Now I got to think as a general manager, I got 52 players there. Is it going to affect them at all? If it is going to affect them, if it's going to cause even a slight problem and it's close, why take them? I mean, too many people want to be politically correct instead of saying, you know, what they feel. Well, that's what I can't see.
Well, they've done a survey among players, and about 85% said they didn't think it was going to be a big deal.
So 15% say it's going to be a big deal.
Well,
so that's 7 out of your whole team.
It's going to be something. You know, back in the 1960s, Vince Lombardi had several players on the team that, including Jackie Smith, who turned out to be gay. Lombardi said to the players, if you have any questions about a player's manhood, don't let your butt hit the floor before you're out the door. So his opinion was, judge each other on how you play football.
Right, but what I'm talking about, right, you look at it that way, but it's different. You're not judging someone how he plays football in this situation. You got to think of other people now. And when people start talking, taking the other point of view, they say, oh, they're bigots, this or that. Well, if they feel a certain way, different than you do, that's what I'm trying to get across. I could care less. I would take the better person if it was just me and that person. If I want the best person, it doesn't matter to me.
Well,
but now you got to think about the other players.
I think in a few years, it won't be a controversy, it won't be any issue, because there'll just be openly gay players in sports, and the players who are intolerant are the ones who get kicked off the teams. And leading into that, we have the situation resolving in Miami with both Jonathan Martin and Richie Incognito probably never to play in the National Football League again. The coach now saying he will be accountable going forward. I guess he wasn't accountable in the past, and they fired, I guess, the head trainer and another assistant over the whole
They'll both play
problem.
again. They'll both play again. He'll probably get suspended for half a season, whatever. Incognito will get suspended. Someone will sign him.
Well, part of the Dolphins' problem was putting Incognito into a leadership position when he's been a bad actor throughout his career.
If he apologizes, I would imagine if he apologizes and gets a suspension, people forgive when someone, if he really apologizes, maybe does speaking engagements and stuff like that or whatever, and someone will pick him up, because when something like that happens to people, sometimes they can become better people. And you would think that hopefully, although he's been bad for a while there, but that's, he's probably thinking that's football.
I mean, he had problems.
He's banging heads every game.
He had problems from day one when he was at Nebraska as far as spearing a walk-on in tryouts.
But he'll play again.
Well, we'll see.
He will.
I wouldn't be shocked if he does it. It all depends about if you have enough talent. Steve Howe had been cocaine suspension 8 times, but he kept playing until he couldn't throw the ball hard anymore.
Yeah.
So.
But I mean, I look at things differently. I've talked to people in work about a couple of situations, that situation, the last one we talked about, and I think you got to leave people alone. If people feel one way, they feel that way. Because they feel that way, they're no good? We're talking back to Smart, we're going back to that. Because they feel one way, they're not, again, you're not politically correct. I don't like that. I know the way I feel, and again, like I said, I could care less, but if someone else feels a different way, why am I getting on them? That's the way they feel.
Well, you're allowed to have feelings, but you're not allowed to be prejudiced.
You don't want to hurt them.
Right. So if you say something,
what if you say I don't want to go in the shower with them? No, let's be true.
You don't have to.
All right, that's all I'm saying.
Yeah. Well,
but they're bad because they say that?
No, if you want to avoid somebody because of whatever.
But that's all I'm talking about. I'm not talking about them treating them differently. I'm just talking about them having that type of feeling coming out with it.
Well, and it's been a tough week for the National Football League, PR-wise. Roger Goodell, who is the chief manager of controversy within the NFL as the head, came out with, he got $3 million in salary and $41 million in bonus. So he got $44 million to be the commissioner of the NFL, not too shabby.
What do they do?
Well, and then Ray Rice is up on charges for apparently knocking his girlfriend out and dragging her around by the hair.
And it was on film.
And Darren Sharper makes Ray Rice look like a,
Did they sign him to what, 5 more years?
Sharper is going to be up on multiple charges of drug and sexual battery all over the United States. It sounds like wherever he's gone, there's problems. It was out in the West Coast, now it's down in Miami, and good luck for him.
Yeah. I mean, it's just unbelievable. I mean, that's the everyday life, though,
Right. Now, separate issue in sports is what's really sports. For example, I don't have a subscription to Sports Illustrated, but apparently the swimsuit issue came out. Is that sports? I don't really think it's sports, but it probably sells a lot of magazines.
How's it sports?
Anyway. But
most guys that like sports like the magazine.
It does relate to Justin Verlander. So Justin Verlander apparently now is the main squeeze of Kate Upton. So Verlander, in addition to whatever kind of huge bucks he's making.
$20 million a year.
Yeah, so he's doing okay away from the ballpark.
She makes pretty good money too.
Yeah, she may make more money than he does, sort of like Brady and Giselle. All right. Now the NFL Combine is underway. They asked the Patriots if they were going to have a statement at the Combine. And Belichick said, no, of course not.
He was one of the two or three teams that said no.
Right. We're here to look at players. But he did say today in interviews that it did provide a clearinghouse to look at players in drills, athletic drills against other players. So you can get an idea about their quickness, power, and so forth, as well as extensive medicals, because I guess all the players get MRIs of shoulders and knees and so forth, so that nobody's pulling the wool over the team's eyes.
And you're not going to see the Pats drafting a player in the 4th round that should have been picked in the 1st round anymore either.
Well, exactly. Obviously the Patriots are still waiting for relief or not on Aaron Hernandez's contract. I don't know exactly why the players' union is standing up for Hernandez to the extent that they are. Why would they even want to be associated with the guy?
That's ridiculous. Why do they have to wait for that? They shouldn't have it on their salary cap. That shouldn't be affecting them.
And the salary cap comes out today at $130 million. The Patriots have 4 and change left over, so they have about $8 million of free money to use for their draft choices and re-signing players. Everyone expects that Isaac Sapooga is gone. He's $3.5 million. Will Fork could get restructured. Danny Amendola could easily be cut after March. So the Patriots may have $15, $18 million in salary to restructure.
If Amendola goes, they better make sure they sign Edelman.
Well, it'll probably be one or the other.
I don't know. What do you think about letting? What do you think about cutting Mankins or Wilfork?
Well, I think Mankins historically has given him strength against the rush up the middle. Who's the center?
Connolly.
Connolly, yeah, Connolly. Obviously, everybody's remembering Terrence Knight and running him over like he wasn't even there.
Wendell took over for Connolly, but Knight ran him over.
Yeah, so I think I wouldn't be shocked if the Patriots were looking for help in the center position.
But isn't Wilfork like over $10 million on the salary cap, and isn't Mankins almost 10?
I thought Wilfork was somewhere between 8 and 9, but it's a lot. And I'm not betting against Wilfork as far as coming back from the Achilles injury, because he's a highly motivated guy. But
he's a leader of the team, but I don't know if he's worth that now. I don't even know if Mankins is worth it. I said it when they signed him way back and gave him all that money. So the way their offensive line runs, I mean, you can just put anybody in there. I mean, what does he do special that other players on that line don't do?
Well, they're going to have a new offensive line coach instead of Scarnecchia. Now, these guys have been there long enough that it shouldn't make that much difference.
It may be better for the team, too, although Scarnecchia was real good. I mean, you don't know who you're getting in. You may get a star there, a guy who's a little different, works a little different with them. You never know. I mean, but their offensive line has been one of their strengths. So.
Well, and you see around the league, players are being asked to restructure. Larry Fitzgerald, his cap hit was like $18 million or something next year, and he's restructuring. He's still going to get the money, but I just don't think you can assign that much money to an individual player without hurting your team. Obviously, Denver gave Peyton Manning big money and didn't have a problem.
Yeah, and then you look at the Patriots too. I didn't know McCourty was getting almost $5 million a year.
Yeah, well, the issue first of all for them is what happens to Talib, and
Talib and Edelman.
Yeah, Talib. They're talking about should they offer him $7 million a year for 3 years? That seems kind of high to me. And
how do they franchise him? Go up to almost $11 million.
Yeah,
you can't. If you're saying they only have $8 million now.
Right. Well, obviously, if you don't re-sign a guy like Talib, that frees up $5 million that you can use towards signing somebody else, even if it's short term.
But even though Talib is, to me, both of the 2 biggest games in the last 2 years, he supposedly was injured. I mean, I'm not happy about that. He goes down and the team falls apart in both games. I mean, it shows you one thing, that you need him. I mean, he could take the best receiver away usually.
Well, certainly Seattle showed in the Super Bowl that it's not all about offense. You need to have more outstanding defensive players, and everybody's pointing to the tight end position and to safety as the Patriots' big needs.
Well, like I told you last show, what I'm happy about now, especially with Collins, the way he finished up, and Hightower. People are forgetting about Hightower. Middle of the year, he struggled, but at the end of the year, he came on real strong. He was playing tremendous at the end of the year. And with Mayo back, you got three real good linebackers there.
Well, and people talk about the combine. It doesn't mean anything. Well, if you watch a YouTube video, sad to say that I did, Jamie Collins at the combine did an 11-foot 7-inch broad jump and 41-inch vertical jump. I think Michael Thompson, who played for North Carolina State and then the NBA, had a 44-inch vertical jump. So, and Collins is enormous. So you look at these guys, and they're just exceptional athletes. And he showed he looks like he's going to be a heck of a football player.
Well, they have a chance to be real good again next year. They have a chance to win it next year. Just, you know, who is Belichick going to pick up as a free agent? I don't like what you said. He only has $8 million, you know, to work with. That's with the draft picks and free agents.
Right.
There's got to be more money around.
Well, they'll end up restructuring some guys, as they always end up doing. You know, because they say, do you want to restructure your contract, or we're just going to cut you? So, anyway, we'll be right back.
Hey, this is Paul Rabel from the Boston Cannons, and you're watching Let's Talk Sports.
Welcome back. Once again, we have Jen Gentile of the Melrose Weekly. It's a great skill to be able to say no. Jen obviously hasn't acquired that. She's agreed to come again with us, talk about high school sports. Welcome back, Jen.
Thank you.
Jen.
Thanks.
Tell us a little bit about Annalisa DeBarry.
Yeah, well, one of the big news this week was that over the weekend, Annalisa DeBarry, who's a senior gymnastic player from Melrose, became the state champion all around. This was not really unexpected. She had a great season last year. She came in second place in the state. She had a silver medal to a senior. So when she assumed the top seed position in the postseason, and sure enough, did a great job at Algonquin High School last weekend, beating some great competition from Beverly, North Andover, and she claimed the top spot. And she becomes another, you know, Melrose has claimed a few state champions in the last few years, and she's our latest one. And it's a great accomplishment for her because it's actually her third state title in 3 different sports at Melrose High School. So she was a last year's Division III state champion in the triple jump. And she was also a starter on the Melrose volleyball team who won the state championship as well in 2013. So whether or not she's the best female athlete in Melrose High School is debatable. I mean, she's up there, but she's definitely the most decorated at this point.
Now, was she a divisional champ or a state champ?
She's the state champ all around.
All around?
She beat everybody in the state.
Division I, Division II?
Yep, absolutely.
Now, what does that consist of? What events?
4 events: vault, beam, floor, and bars. She actually did not clinch every routine. She was somewhere like 2 or 3. But because she's a 4 routine athlete, and a lot of these girls weren't, they might have done 3 routines. Her score was higher than everybody else's at the end of the day. And it was just a real terrific performance for her. Although her highest was her performance on the beam was great. It was a 9.4. And the judges actually were a little conservative, and she actually had to compete first, which almost like in figure skating is a disadvantage because judges tend to hold scores back. So she competed first in almost every event, including her floor, which is her lights out, beautiful performance. And she's been getting 9.6s, 9.7s in those all year. And her score was a little low, but because she was so consistent in every routine, she managed to top the competition.
No, I've seen her on TV do a floor exercise. I think I saw her do a 9.6 one time, and they won that event. I mean, that night. But she was sensational on it. And I'm trying to compare it to, you know, the girls that go into the Olympics. I'm saying she's. I'm watching. I'm saying she's not far away.
No, not necessarily. I mean, she actually, you know, she actually was selected to the national team for high school. So she'll be traveling to Florida in May with the rest of the representatives from the country. So she's really a legitimate gymnastics star, but she won't be pursuing it in college because she's pursuing track, which another sport that she's very good at. And she'll be attending Tufts in the fall, where she'll run track for the college.
That's great.
I think her health is likely to hold up a lot better over the long term with track than with gymnastics.
Probably. Gymnastics is very taxing on the body. And there, you know, you could have a bad back for life. So, I mean, she's just an athlete that can pick up any sport and be great at it. She probably would have been a really great soccer star, but she played volleyball. So, she just does everything right, and it's a great thing for her and great thing for Melrose.
No, she won the state championship, but don't they go on from there? I thought I read something where the team goes on.
The team, yep, they compete this weekend as a team. They qualified as a team because of their score, their average score. Was 140, which is much higher than a lot of teams around here. So they're competing this weekend as a team. And if they score within the top 2, they can advance to All New England as a team. The chances are they could do it, but they're actually missing one player one gymnast who is on, you know, this whole February vacation. These kids a lot of them aren't available for sectional play because the band went to Florida. So sometimes you don't see these kids at sectionals, and it's sad, but maybe
Were they
this
going on
family-
vacation?
They go on vacation. Apparently, there's a lot of school-sponsored things, like the yearbook goes to Florida, the band goes to Florida. Everyone seems to be going to Disney World, and it does take away from a lot of this tournament play, which is too bad. I mean, it's okay to miss some regular season games, but so they will be missing a very high scorer on the floor. So there's a chance that they may not score as high as they normally do because of this one omission, but we'll
that's a
see.
shame.
It
That's
would
a
be.
shame
This
for the
is
rest
their
of the
best
girls.
team that they've had,
Well,
and they always have
backups,
great
though,
teams.
right? I mean, they have other people
They
that can
do,
fill
yeah.
in.
But this girl is a real steady 9-0 gymnast.
Wow.
So
Well, the team won the Middlesex League Championship for the 5th year in a row.
yes,
And
absolutely.
Coach Denise Valdez has to be really excited about
She
how
is.
exceptional they've performed.
And she is, and she's a sweetheart, and she's been doing this job for many, many years. And it just seems every year there's just a backup of kids ready to step right in with their departing seniors and just get the job done.
Where do they come from? They come from the Y program?
I think they start at the Y program, and then a lot of them actually do leave and they go to gymnastics more in Woburn. Some of them go to the Reading Gymnastics Academy. So I'd say about maybe 75% of the team is on the current YMCA high-level team. Annalisa has not. She did not train there.
Oh,
Well, there was a lot of excitement in girls hockey action this week. On Monday, or was it Tuesday, the girls qualified for the postseason with a 5-1 victory over the combined
Yes.
Peabody-Linfield team. Haley Gorman had a hat trick and finished with 22 goals this season and 100 points for her career, which is quite an achievement. It's noteworthy that the team has 5 8th graders participating, and those 5 8th graders scored 30% of the goals and 40% of the points this season. So they weren't just along for the ride, they were solid contributors.
They were, and this is actually, it's a real great achievement for a startup team, first-year team in the high school, to do what they've done. It was down to the wire, win or lose, they had to take that game, and they did. And it was great for Haley. Haley's been playing, I think, since she was in 8th grade. I think she was on the co-op team, with Watertown. So,
Yeah.
she's the team's leading scorer. She's the most experienced. Her and Lauren Craig. It's such a wonderful thing for them. They're the real the founders of the team. These 8th grade girls, they paved the way for them, and it's really nice to see the cycle come in now. And those girls, those 8th graders, they're going to be the next ones that will score 100 goals. So it's exciting for the sport, and I give a lot of credit to the coach. He's done a really good job this year, and I think they'll do well in the playoffs. I think the 10-10 record is a little deceptive because they're in a really tough league, and they have to play Watertown twice, and Watertown's really up there. So any team, and especially in the boys side too, they're in some tough divisions. So I think you can look at them and maybe expect them to do a little bit better in the playoffs because they've all been there.
Yeah,
The majority of them.
they've had 7, the girls have had 7 games against top 20 teams in the state, well, in the East Mass. And they played Winchester, they played Woburn, who's real strong,
yeah.
Reading,
Reading.
2 against, like you said, Watertown. No, they played 2 against Methuen, who's not in their league. Methuen's one of the top teams. They only have 1 loss, I think, all year.
Right.
They played 2 great games against them. So in the Burlington game,
They split with them.
they split with Burlington. So they've had a great schedule. I did the Methuen game, and they lost by 4-3. It was an unbelievable game. And Methuen had 5 power plays. They didn't have 1. And you should have saw some of the calls up there.
Oh, really?
Parents were very
Yeah.
upset about the way it was officiated, the game. But Melrose, I thought, played their best game. Again. Well, you did the Reading
Right.
game.
Well, right. The Reading game, Melrose was clearly intimidated and nervous the first period, and I spoke with Coach Rush about that, and she said that's understandable. We have a lot of young players, and they get psyched out sometimes. But after that, they outscored Reading 1-0 after falling behind 2 goals, and it was really a terrific game.
Yeah, and that, it was funny too. I did the Wilmington game, and they beat Wilmington the first time they played them, and that was a game before they clinched the tournament. And we were right on the ice doing the game. We were right there in the front row, and there was no glass in front of us. Dude, they move,
Yes.
and they hit. I mean, I'm
Right.
looking at little, the Fryer and all those girls
Yeah.
and Kroon,
Sure.
and they're skating. They're coming right by you, and they're going 100, full speed, and these girls are coming right in front of them, cutting them and brushing them.
Yeah.
And they're not backing down at all. And they're 8th graders.
Well, I guess they do a lot of conditioning off the ice.
They're-
And I think that's a huge part of their regimen is that they do work out in the gym, and that's probably made the difference.
Well, speaking of coaching, I did a little research, as I like to do, and on the MIAA website, they discuss coaching certification. Now, I don't know the merits of coaching certification, but the requirements include 4 hours of classroom, 3 modules that you have to take online, and then you have to pass an MIAA-sponsored test, as well as paying $95. I don't know if that's additional fees or not. And many of the surrounding communities, a large number of coaches are certified. Again, I don't know what that means, how important that is. But, for example, Reading, I think, had 29. Wakefield, 17. Melrose has 4, including both of the hockey coaches, Coach Rush and Coach Tetro. Again, if you have an extremely experienced coach, it may not mean very much, but
Sure.
maybe these younger coaches thought it was important to add to their resume.
Yeah, that's interesting. Yeah, but you know, in the boys' side, there, you know, Mirasolo once again has proven to be really a dynamite, you know, addition to this team and has really turned it around.
Now, one issue that comes up that nobody's talking about it, of course, is that when you have all these young players, 8th graders and freshmen, sometimes the upper class of players and potentially their parents may feel disenfranchised, fairly or not. And you know, we're not, you know, frankly, we don't really know the parents, and we don't really, since all the players have helmets on, they could walk in here and we wouldn't be able to tell who's who.
Sure.
But how do you think players and families reconcile that in the meritocracy that's we know as sports?
Well, I think the culture of sports, high school sports, has changed. When I played sports a long time ago, my dad watched from the car. He didn't know who my coach was. There was no parent involvement. And now parents, I think the involvement in terms of booster clubs, I think they've taken it to another level. It could be that some parents feel entitled because I've been a booster member, I've been fundraising, and now my daughter's not playing. There could be that sentiment. Or it could just be sour grapes because a daughter who is a sophomore hasn't panned out to be a spectacular senior, and it just hasn't worked out. And it happens every day, unfortunately.
Well, I talked to Steve Harrington a few years ago, who is the very successful coach at Watertown High School basketball. I think they've won at least 2 state championships, if not 3. He said he was on the bench the first game of the season, and his cell phone went off, and it was a parent calling him from the stands, asking him why his son wasn't playing.
That reminds me of the blind side.
Yeah,
Right.
right.
And he said after that he never answered the phone during a game.
But we allow it to happen. You know, it just happens. I think parent involvement has gone for good or bad. It can be a wonderful thing. It can be a distraction. I think athletes themselves, it's a life lesson to learn. If there's a great 8th grader or 9th grader that's going to change your team, you have no choice but to play them. And when I played in high school, there was a shortstop who was lights out, better than anybody that had ever stepped foot on and she assumed shortstop position, and everyone understood it, and she made our team better. And there was no hurt feelings about it. So I think it just requires a little maturity on both the athlete and the parents. And as long as it's done for the best of the team and not nepotism, then everyone should really understand.
Well, I think that in girls' sports, because girls mature physically at a younger age and have 98% of their height by the time they're 16 years old, freshmen can come in and compete against seniors because there's not as much physical difference. Freshman boys versus senior boys as a group is dramatically different.
Sure, and in the case of the girls' hockey team, they had to take 8th graders. So there's that, or there could be that rare exception that I know the girls' basketball team has seen some really outstanding freshman talent. And in that case, if you want to build up your program, you shouldn't be afraid to bring them in and even give them a big role if it's going to help the team.
Well, right. Well, the problem you have is that, previous years before then, maybe the year before, 2 years before that, you're bringing on girls
Right.
just because they've been in the program, and some girls that just can't really handle varsity basketball. We talk about varsity basketball, and other girls that are more talented are left behind, and then the whole program is affected by it. And then that's a constant thing. I mean, it's been happening for years, but basically the last few years it's happening. We're seeing it in the girls' basketball.
And you can't be afraid of making tough decisions. Every coach has to do it. A great example of that is the boys' basketball team. I've seen Kasper Zach make some tough decisions with his players, but he's usually right and usually gets the right guys out on the floor. On the girls' side, the same decisions have to be made. And you can't be afraid of offending people. I think as long as there's been sports, there's been people who have been disappointed because of their lack of playing time, even seniors. I mean, I remember seniors that just showed up for the photo at the end of the season.
Steve Pacheco over at Home News here, Woburn Times and other communities, writes the Around the Rim column, and he interviewed Middlesex League basketball coaches about what their approach was in evaluating and playing players. And for example, Steve Sullivan, who's been very successful over at Woburn, said, I don't look at the player's age. I look at how the player plays. If they can play, they play. If they can't play, they can't play.
It should be that simple.
And for example, I think it's Marissa Gattuso, the freshman point guard, had an outstanding season for them, and Woburn's one of the top teams. Shannon Murphy is a center on Watertown, very talented player, had a game with double-double, 20-something points and 11 rebounds, 5 blocks. She had a terrific season, and it seems to me that if you deserve to play, you should play.
Right.
If for whatever reason you're not quite as skilled or you're as competitive, then you don't deserve the same minutes.
Right. And I hope that's something that Coach Shanahan, is able to do next season. Maybe she'll feel a little bit more solo possession of her team and make these decisions, especially where there is a lot of young talent coming up. It'll be a fresh slate. I do see talent in the team. I really do. I look at, they have some real good individual players, and I'd like to see them just get together as a unit. You didn't feel like you were watching much of a unit out there.
Well, they had 3 forwards who scored at least 19 points in a game. Kat Torpy, Ashley Harding, and Katie Sullivan.
And those are 3 great players. Yeah.
Sarah Foote had definite progress during the year.
I liked her.
And Leonora Ivers had an outstanding opening game of the season, the team's solo win of the season.
Sure.
But you know what bothers me, though? You hear from, Coach Shanahan, this is her first year. She doesn't have the experience coaching varsity basketball. And hopefully she'll keep getting better and better as the years go by. I mean, everybody learns, especially through basketball. But, you just look at the program and, like I told Ron before the last game, we were playing Wakefield. And I said, Ron, count how many times Melrose gets points off the fast break, and let's count how many times Wakefield gets points off the fast break. Mm-hmm. Wakefield scored more than 20 points fast break against Melrose. Melrose didn't get 1 point in transition. Not one. Did they look to fast break? So my thinking is, the way I'm looking at it, and I was there because I know most of the girls. We've coached, and some of them are on the freshman JV varsity. But I'm watching it, and I'm seeing these people making excuses, saying that the coaches, Melrose didn't have much talent. So what do you expect? What do you expect from them? Well, you expect a lot more than 1-17, and them missing out on their last 2 games because, for some reason, the athletic director or the coaching staff didn't schedule the 2 games. I don't know why. They should have played 20 games like every other team plays.
Sure. Well, I agree, and then I don't think this whisper campaign that there's no talent on the team is fair, but I think that what is real is that you have to address where the needs are objectively. And for example, in an 18-game season, they allowed 55 points or more 12 times.
Sure.
And they only scored over 51 twice. And one of those was a late 3-pointer in the last 10 seconds. So unless you can stop the other team, you're going to have, it's going to be really hard to compete. Your points have to come from somewhere. And most of the time, in high school, if you're a high-scoring team, they're going to come from transition. Yeah,
and that's why I look at it. And I'm kind of sick of hearing people say they didn't have much talent. They had enough talent. Here's what they had. You have 4 classes. I guarantee you that the freshman class alone, and they're not all the best players, because they're all, the other classes there was some talent. The freshman class alone coming up would have made the tournament. They would have made the tournament. They would have been better than 10-10 in that league. I mean, how do you lose to Burlington twice? How do you lose to Wakefield twice?
Right.
How do you get blown out by Tewksbury twice, who's not even a good team? And I don't care where Wilmington ended up. You could shut down that team and hold them to in the 30s. You could have shut down almost every team in that league. You could have held them under 40 points, and Arlington scores 80-something against them. Tewksbury scores 70-something against them one game. That's ridiculous. They shouldn't have scored more than 40 points, any of these teams. So I don't want to hear that there wasn't enough talent. You know, you don't say the players weren't talented enough. It's the whole program. It starts with the athletic director and the coaches, and then you go down to the players. Because I know one player that the progression stopped because she was on the high school team, and that's Victoria Crovo. She got no coaching at all on that JV team, no coaching at all. Her progression stopped because they weren't smart enough to even bring her up and play in the varsity, where she was the best JV player. They didn't even bring her up for the last 2 games to show her. What were they doing, punishing her? The best player on the JV team, who should have been on the varsity, whose progression should have kept going instead of stopping because she got absolutely no coaching. They didn't know how to coach her.
Right.
I mean, that's just ridiculous.
And, for people who are objective, Victoria scored 24 points in one of the junior varsity
how many
games
rebounds?
this year. And she's a really talented athlete. But I want to be solution-focused. First, during the early part of the season, when you're evaluating players for the team, the first day shouldn't be spent on all running when you're not familiar with the players. That's not, that's a time-honored tradition, but if you are new to the program and you need to evaluate the players, you need to spend all the time evaluating the players. Second, there needs to be an age-blinded evaluation. If somebody's a freshman or sophomore and they are one of the top players, they need to play. They certainly need to make the team. Third, 8th graders should never be excluded from the summer program and should be allowed to participate if they have the ability, the interest, and the time to be allowed to participate. And that was a major problem with this year's team. Fourth, they need attention to one solid standard of defense. The team went from man-to-man to 1-3-1 zone to 1-2-2 zone to box and 1 to 2-1-2 zone. They played a different style of defense all through the season and never got really strong at any, surrendering over 60 points in the last game. And this was in a slower-paced environment. And last, there needs to be some real accountability. It's not really clear that there is any because it's all, I don't have good players. Well, it has to work one way. Either you don't have good players, which I reject, or you do have good enough players and you're not getting the most out of your players, which I'm concerned about.
Well, Katie Sullivan should have been an all-league player. She should have been one of the top players in the league.
I'm still hoping she is, but I have a feeling. This year. I haven't seen the list yet. I hope she is, because she had a great season.
Well, whose fault is it there? It's not all Katie's fault. Right. Katie should have been. I know if I had Katie on my team, I would have made sure coming into the first game that she knew I was 100% behind her and what I expected from her. And I would tell her, Katie, you're going to be the all-league player or you're going to be sitting on the bench. Which one do you want? One of the two. All-league or sit on the bench.
I think the other point is that players need roles. The Bobby Knight saying, just because I want you on the floor doesn't mean I want you to shoot. Well, you can direct the shots to the scorers, and they had players who could score. Now, if you're a great rebounder, great defender, mostly a passer, that's fine. You can do those things. You need to be on the floor, but you don't have to be shooting. Dean Smith, when he was at North Carolina, always made a point to praise the players who were contributing to the success of the team but weren't necessarily the high scorers. Why did he do that? He said the scorers always get plenty of praise. It's the players who are role players playing defense, doing the grunt work, setting screens, getting block shots, doing the hard work, hard physical work that don't get enough credit.
But one other thing, there's enough I said this to Paragerio during the summer. This team in 2 years should be battling for the states. You have the talent here, it's got to be brought along properly. They should be battling for the states. And I say now, the talent they have, coming back, people, and I can't stand people saying they don't have talent. With the talent they have now, if they work it right, this team next year should be one of the top 2 teams in the Middlesex League. Talent-wise, I don't know about the coach, and talent-wise, they're good enough. And then when this year's sophomore class, when they're seniors, and this freshman class, when they're juniors, they should be battling for the state title. Yeah. They should be battling. But what I don't want to see is girls go off here, not playing AAU because they're down. People don't think we're good enough, and breaking up. Because like I said earlier on, I said, that freshman class that just went up there would have made the tournament alone. Sure. Would have made the tournament. And you have girls like Foote, on that team. You have Sullivan on that team. You had Jill McGinnis on that team. You had a couple of injuries. and you had other players, and then with those girls, they should have made the tournament. I know that freshman class alone would have made the tournament.
Right.
So there's a problem there. It's not the players. It's a problem from up above down. So when everybody says it's the players, they're 100% wrong.
Well, thanks for joining us for this wonderful discussion. We'll be
I get heated when-
We'll be right back. Welcome back. Spring will soon be here, and young men's thoughts will turn to glove and bat and ball. The Red Sox opened up spring training this week, and there's already a little bit of controversy as David Ortiz wants to talk contract extension. He says, I can't talk contract extension after I've retired.
Well, you know what's funny, too, is that it's all the talk shows. They want to have something to talk about. What's the big deal? He wants another year. And they're saying what's right and what's wrong. Well, you know the Red Sox fans want him to get another year. They want him to be here for 2 years. You know, and then you hear these reporters say, well, you know, why are they giving him another year? Why don't they wait to see how he does? Well, what if they did that thing? What if they did the same thing last year when they were all saying they shouldn't give him another year? See how he does. Well, look at the year he had. What if he said it this summer, the Red Sox come up to him and says, okay, we'll give you $15 million for the next 2 years because you had a good year. Oh, sorry, guys. I'm going to the Yankees. The Yankees just offered me a 2-year contract for $20 million a year. And the Yankees win the World Series, and the Red Sox are back there. I can't believe these people are taking that side.
Everybody talks about their contract, and nobody really should be talking contract parameters as far as money and years out loud. You know, Lester talks about taking the, quote, hometown discount, end quote, but not...
There's no hometown discount.
But not a players' union altering discount. What does that mean? So
$20 million a year for 5 years he's going to get.
At least.
And I don't know if he deserves it. Because he hasn't had, like I told you before, he's been a superstar 2 out of the 6 years.
I don't know who deserves anything anymore. I mean, if you said to me, if Mike Trout wanted to come here for a 1-year deal, you know, let's say Mike Trout just offered himself up when he becomes eligible year by year. So you think your team's pretty close, and you can get Mike Trout, but you're only going to pay him for a year. What do you think?
$30 million.
Maybe more, maybe 40. You know, so the Dodgers would probably pay him 40 for a year. You know, and then is it better to sign a 5-year deal for 150 or to take 40, and then if you lead a team to a championship, see if you can get 45 the next year?
But you know, I'm a Yankee fan, and all I know as a Yankee fan, since Ortiz has been with the Red Sox, they won 3 World Championships, and he's been a big reason. He was the biggest reason last year.
You can't be in denial. The guy's been a great player, however he's managed to do it. You know, I know the issues about performance-enhancing drugs, but he's also been able to
That's why they should sign him.
He's been able to close down some of the holes in his, you know, when he came up, you know, you could get him out, up and in.
Well, that was 3 years ago, until he went back on the drugs.
Well, whatever he's doing, he's been able You know, people have holes. Jacoby Ellsbury, when he came up, fastballs down and in. It was a ground out to second base, ground out to first. He learned to hit.
But
Bradley's got the same hole right now.
that's not the question with Ortiz, though. The question with Ortiz is he's 38 years old and is he going to break down? If I'm the owner of the Red Sox, I want him for 2 more years. Because what I don't want him to have a year like he had last year, and then after that year, next summer, him sign with the Yankees. And watch the Yankees win the World Championship because we didn't want to sign Ortiz, who's been a big factor in 3 World Championships. So the people who are looking at it the wrong way. You don't have to give it to him. Well, you do have to give it to him. You don't want him walking, and especially if he's on the PEDs, you know he's going to last 2 more years, just like Bonds did.
They have a lot of salary coming off at the end of the year. You know, so
But that shouldn't even be a question.
Well, when you're making as much money as the Red Sox
No, but I'm
are,
saying about Ortiz, it shouldn't even be a question. Give him a year. I mean, you kidding me?
he's going to get it, no doubt. Now, the other issue was that, you know, I guess the Pope of Boston baseball himself, Ryan Dempster, retired. The guy
That was amazing.
Well, he didn't retire. He announced he wasn't going to play this year because of injury. And
How did you give up $13 million for him?
I don't know. He could have just he could have just played terribly, and they cut him, and he gets his money.
Right, or he could have said his arm's bothering him.
Right. So I'll give him all the credit in the world. Apparently, he'd already made $100 million in baseball. He's an honest guy.
And the players love him.
And the players did
He's
like
going
him.
to be more respected now by the players.
Right. Or they're going to say you're nuts because you didn't take the money.
Yeah.
But either way, now the big issue that still is the overhang is what happens to the Middlebrooks, Bogarts, Stephen Drew love triangle. Stephen Drew, go sign somewhere else.
Well, the
go
problem
away.
is, I don't know how the Players Association agreed to that. You know, you have to give up a draft pick if you tender the guy. So they tendered him the Red Sox 14.1. Their mistake was not taking it. Because to me, he's only a $7 million player at the most. So he's getting $14 million for 1 year. After this year, you have a good year, then you go for your contract. I don't know what they're thinking about.
If you want tons of money, maybe you shouldn't hit 120 in the playoffs.
But you know, Ron, why aren't they looking at it this way? All right, he's still fairly young. They're going to give him $14 million for 1 year. He's only a $7 million player.
They offered him the money so they could get the draft choice, and in the same way, Drew's the one who's losing. Now, he hit under 200 against left-handed pitching with no power whatsoever. He hit 120, I think, in the postseason. He did field outstanding ball at shortstop, but
so what is that
14 million,
worth to you? No.
14 million, that's crazy.
No, to really be honest about it, right? What do you think he's worth as a player? You know the system. Isn't it $7 million? When you think he's like a $7 million player?
I'd say he could probably get what he got last year, 9.5.
Oh, but he's a $7 million player.
Yeah, right. Well, everybody's overpaid.
So they're going to give him $14 million. So go out and have a pretty good year. And now here's the way I'm looking at it. There's $14 million. You got 9 last year. You have a pretty good year. Then you go for your 3 years. You know, when they and maybe they'll tender you again, and maybe they'll agree to a contract. If you agree to that tender, $14 million, he probably would have got a 3-year contract at $10 million a year. Wouldn't he? With the Red Sox, I don't know what they were thinking about.
Well, who goes off the reservation first? I don't really call Ortiz going off the reservation because he.
No, he was.
You know,
He was fine with
who's the
that.
guy who's going to be the first one to cause a controversy?
With the Red Sox?
Yeah.
They're really a.
All right, I'll go with A.J. Przynski.
Oh,
No.
he was happy to be there, though.
He's
You kidding me?
to play. He's getting the money. You know, and he probably won't play against lefties because Ross will play.
Ross, though, I don't know, because Ross, they interviewed Ross the other day, and Ross said he's good against lefties. He said he did a good job when he batted against Lester last year. He got a lot of good at-bats against him. So he thinks Ross wasn't sure, because they asked him, how many games are you going to be playing?
I guess Ross is hoping not to have to play at all.
It was amazing, though, last year, him getting all that playing time because of his defense.
Well, and Saltalamacchia, who had a really good year, ended up taking, we're going to say, short money for Florida, 3 for 21.
Yeah, well, that's not bad for him, though. Was he making $4 million the year before?
Something like that. But still, that's not
No.
by professional
What do you
sports
have, 270
standards.
something with so many doubles?
Yeah,
He had a good year.
His OPS was around 750.
They kind of, yeah. He really got down when they didn't play him in the World Series and they
Yeah.
played Ross all
Well,
those
he didn't
games.
play him because he had some defensive miscues,
Couple,
let's say. Threw
you
the
know.
ball into left field a couple times.
Yeah.
You know, and that, you know, made a big difference in the game. Was it game 3 against St. Louis.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, anyway, we'll see what goes there.
But forget the Red Sox this year. They lost Ellsbury. The Yankees are the team again.
Now, we can't play the Olympic theme music because that's all copyrighted. But the Olympics have been going on, and Melrose's Steve Langton managed to get a bronze medal in bobsled, so local fans have to be excited about that.
Yeah, I remember his father when he was younger. You talk about the captain of the crew there, I forget his name, said that he's has 0% body fat. Well, that's how his uncle and his father were when they were younger. I remember them when they were athletes, very good athletes, and they were always in great shape.
Well, you look at bobsled now, especially women's bobsled, and it's become track with a pilot.
Would they get a silver and a bronze?
Silver and a bronze, because they have tremendous athletes who are, these women who are track athletes, just powerful, gigantic legs. They must have 32-inch thighs, and they explode off the start. And even other, I think maybe it was Great Britain also had a black woman, can't say African-American, she's not African-American, and she's in England. Yeah. Fantastic athletes. And Lolo Jones still came up short, but that was really a driving problem on that one.
You wonder how a real good athlete decides to go in the bobsled. Well, what's the other thing? The skull? What is that called?
Oh, skeleton. Skeleton is insane. Luge, you're going down lying on your back, so at least you have your feet going first, so you don't worry about your head smashing into something.
I don't know how anybody does. 70-something miles an hour?
That is the scariest thing. I'd love to see one of those little cameras on the person's head.
How do they get involved in that?
I don't know how anybody would do that sport, but there are obviously people who like doing that. Now, Shaun White, half-pipe hero, came up out of the medal competition, and apparently most of his peers were delighted. Now,
well, because he was getting all the recognition. Well, he's a multi-millionaire.
He's gotten all the recognition, but also apparently his sponsor had built him his personal half-pipe. So he's got one, and he doesn't let anybody else use it. Oh. So other people who compete against him feel that he has a very unfair advantage, and they were pretty happy and not hesitant to let the world know about that.
He's got a lot of money, they said, too, which was amazing to me, his endorsements and all that.
If you look at maybe the most dominant athlete was Ted Ligety in giant slalom. He was just so far faster than I don't know how they showed how he could get on his edges in such a way that he would be able to cut times relative to competitors, but he absolutely wins the race by a second when these are races measured in hundredths of a second.
That's amazing, though, how they cut and they turn, and it's unbelievable how they keep control. It's amazing to me.
Right. And Merrill Davis and Charlie White were both outstanding in ice dancing. The controversy after that was the Canadian pair was unhappy because their coach apparently spent time coaching the Americans.
But they were favored. They were big favorites, weren't they?
Well, I think the coach she's just hedging her bets. So she's the coach of both the gold and the silver medalist.
You actually watched the ice dancing?
I have to say, I was spellbound by it. It was, it's really, I can't relate to it. I could barely skate, but it was really terrific.
What about the girls' hockey team?
Well, I didn't see the game, but apparently Ralph has some thoughts on the hockey.
I just think, with 3-something to go in the game, they're up 2-0. They're playing great hockey. Then all of a sudden, they're leaving the ice open for Canada. It's really, people say, they did their best and all that, but to me, it always comes down to the biggest situations when you have to play your best. When they let Canada, that's the second time this year in this Olympics that Canada came back, beat them at the end of the game, and it's just a shame. You expect, I'm working and I'm talking to a secretary on the phone, and she's watching the game on a computer, and I hear a scream. Canada cut the lead from 2-0 to 2-1. It's like, oh, because I didn't even realize that it was going on then. So I tried to get it on my computer. I couldn't get it on, but then everybody's calling and we're checking. And then we hear they tied it up. Well, they took the goalie out. They tied it up with less than a minute to go, and I go, they're going to lose the game now. Forget about it. Then I heard they got a penalty, and they said the same old thing. The last Olympics was the same thing.
Well, here's a trivia question for it. Well, a piece of trivia. Paula, my daughter, is going to be maid of honor at a former Olympian's wedding this summer.
Oh, great.
So
in New York?
I think it's down the Cape somewhere. So anyway,
It's a shame.
Well, anyway, I was sort of wondering why the NHL has to send all their players, but when you watch the men's hockey, how fantastic it is. It's way better than the NHL this time of year.
They've got to beat Canada tomorrow, the men. They have to beat them. I do not want to see Canada winning again. The last gold medal Canada won, they beat us in overtime. You know, the girls' Canadian team beat us in overtime today. You know, the Americans are playing really strong right now.
Well,
Canada's defense is real tough.
I'm sure
but I
it'll
think the goaltenders are going to be the difference. I think the U.S. wins 3-2 tomorrow.
I'm sure it'll be a heck of a game. Obviously, Quick has been a
I think that's where they
Stanley
have the
Cup
advantage.
champion. Yeah, that people say that's their number one advantage, but
In their wings. How about Kessel?
everybody said, yeah, when the Bruins had Kessel, he was no good. Now he's a star.
Well, he was good, but he didn't like the coach. He didn't like, what's his name?
Well, they always
Because he
want
restricted him, just
Right.
like they did with
Sagan. They always want, the Bruins have, everybody has to go dig in the corner. Nobody can just be a skate around, score goals guy like Kessel. Well, what's the problem?
Now people are saying this, actually saying that he's the best player in the world right now, Kessel. A lot of people are saying that.
Well,
And he's better in the open ice.
Well, certainly the fans in Russia were very unhappy with performance of stars like Kovalchuk and Ovechkin, who just didn't really get it
But you know,
done.
Ron, before I went to work yesterday, I put the game on, the game against, they lost to Finland. Finland, look, don't count them out. I think they play Sweden, right?
Right.
Finland's going to beat, Sweden's been playing good. Finland looked unbelievable in the first period. I had to go to work, but they were all over the Russian team.
And lest we forget, today was the NBA trade deadline, and the Celtics made an absolutely big mistake by doing nothing. You know, they needed to get rid of a good player or two so they could assure themselves a spot in the lottery. Tomorrow night, they play the Lakers, and who would have expected it to be the number 5 from the bottom Lakers against the number 6 from the bottom Celtics?
Well, what they're saying now, what Ainge was saying, is that he'd get more for the players during the summer before the draft than he will now, which is, to me, weird, because teams that are battling, that are close to, you know, making the playoffs or being one of the top teams, you know, you got guys like Humphreys that would help a team. You got Green who would help a team, Bass. You know, some of these teams may need forwards or whatever. You know, guard, Rondo, the Knicks want him bad. But what Ainge isn't thinking about is that they get better by trading Rondo. Because what happens is not only do they get a player, maybe they don't get the player that he would think he may get in the summer. But what they get by trading Rondo is they get a better draft pick.
Well, and we need to finish up.
You know what I mean?
We need to finish up with the NBA Mount Rushmore. LeBron James asked about Mount Rushmore, said he wanted to be one of the 4, along with Michael Jordan, Larry Bird, and Magic Johnson. Well, that might be Mount Rushmore, but to me, there's Mount Olympus. Mount Olympus has Bill Russell at the top with 14 championships in 15 years, including the Olympics and 2 NCAA titles. Then you have Wilt Chamberlain and Kareem Abdul-Jabbar right there, along with Jordan. And then I love Bird, I love Magic, but they're not at the same level as Chamberlain, Russell, Abdul-Jabbar.
Yeah, I mean, I think he was thinking about players during his generation, you know,
Right.
players that he watched play. He didn't watch Russell. He didn't watch Chamberlain. I don't think he didn't
Well,
watch
he wore
Jabbar.
number 6, right? So I think he had
Yeah,
some.
but he didn't see him like we saw him all the time.
Right.
I mean, if he saw them play all the time, then it would be Russell, Chamberlain, probably
Well,
Jabbar.
and Russell had a comment. He said, well, Mr. James, I won the 2 high school championships, 2 NCAA championships, a championship in my first year in the NBA, a championship in my last year in the NBA, and 9 in between.
And he didn't even talk about the Olympics that he won.
Right. And then somebody said, if I wanted to kiss your rings, you'd have to take off your shoes. Well, I've enjoyed being with you tonight. I'm Ron Sen.
And I'm Ralph Labello, and thank you for watching Let's Talk Sports.